Jack quickly grabbed May and pulled her behind Samson, out of the horse's sight. "What's this, then?" the huntsman said, quickly aiming his axe at Jack again. Jack looked from Samson to the exhausted farm horse and back. George owned the only two horses in town, which meant the huntsman had just ridden Samson's mate into the ground, and Samson didn't look too happy about that. The monstrous horse let loose an unnatural growl and slowly advanced on the huntsman, his eyes burning red with hatred. The huntsman froze, then quickly turned the axe toward the horse, the enormous man's expression turning from curious to worried all in the span of a few seconds. "I think he wants to eat your face off," Jack suggested helpfully. "It's just a horse," the huntsman said dismissively, though his eyes never left the animal. "A demon horse," Jack replied, smiling now. "And you just rode his mate almost to death." At that, Samson reared up, neighing horribly, his hooves clawing at the air in front of the huntsman. Desperately, the huntsman brought his sacks up, but Samson drove his hooves down right into the huntsman's chest, crashing the enormous man backward into a tree. The force of the impact actually cracked the tree trunk, but didn't seem to do more than knock the breath out of the man. Samson wasn't finished though. Before the huntsman could move, the horse blocked him in, rearing up on its hind legs again. The huntsman slipped between the trees for protection, but Samson reared again, then drove his hooves into the tree trunks on either side of the man, sending wood chips flying. The huntsman threw one last furious glance at Jack, then disappeared into the forest. Samson, robbed of his prey, squealed in fury and followed the huntsman into the trees with a neigh that sounded almost hungry. Jack took a deep breath, then looked at May. The princess's eyes were as huge as dinner plates, while the fairy in her hair looked just as shocked, if not more. "You okay?" Jack asked her. "I'm going to say that thing in my nightmares," she whispered. "Well, maybe both those things. They deserve each other." "Samson may be evil," Jack said, "but he's still just a horse. The huntsman will outsmart him. Or kill him. Either way, it's not gonna take too long. We gotta get out of here." Jack grabbed the magic bridle and stuck it into his bag, while May glanced over at the horse the huntsman had stolen. "Should we ride her?" the princess asked. Jack shook his head. "She's so tired, I doubt she could carry us both. But even if she could, do you really want Samson coming after us next?" "Good point," May said. Jack grabbed her hand and led the way into the forest, on the opposite side from where the huntsman and Samson had gone. As dark as it was, they both stumbled with almost every step, but fear kept them moving. They ran for what felt like hours, trying to put enough distance between themselves and the huntsman so they could hide. From the stories, Jack knew the man would eventually track them down, but finding their trail in the dark would take a while. and hopefully they'd find some kind of safety first. The problem was, the farther they ran, the more lost Jack got. They'd taken a few unfamiliar twists and turns when riding Samson, and now Jack had no idea where they were. There weren't any landmarks that Jack could see either, just forest in every direction. For all he knew, they were heading back toward Giant's Hand, or worse, toward the Huntsman. "We have to stop," Jack said, his breath coming out in gasps. May didn't bother replying. She was so out of breath. Instead, she just nodded, then fell limply to the forest floor and leaned against a nearby tree. Jack settled himself next to her, and for a few minutes they sat in silence, catching their breath. "We're going to kill ourselves running through the woods like this," Jack said finally. "What do you think about waiting until the sun comes up to keep going?" May nodded, still not saying anything. The fairy in her hair, despite having done nothing more than hang on all night, looked just as exhausted. "Are you all right?" Jack asked the princess. She paused, then turned to look at him. Even in the dark, Jack could tell her eyes were red from crying. "Am I all right?" she asked, her voice quiet. "This hasn't exactly been the greatest day of my life, has it?" A tear rolled down her cheek, and Jack immediately felt guilty for no particular reason. "Oh, hey," he said awkwardly, patting her shoulder. "Don't do that." She sniffed loudly. "Oh, okay then," she said, a bit of a smile showing. "I won't, thanks." "Sorry," he said. "I know this hasn't been easy on you." She looked at him and sighed. "No, it hasn't. But since we're not going anywhere for a while, why don't you tell me how you know my grandmother?" "Oh, right," Jack said. "I mean, everyone knows her. I just wish you'd mentioned that your grandmother was Snow White. That would have explained a lot." May blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?"